All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm seeing folks joining in into our Zoom, into our webinar here. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited that you're here and here to talk to you today about this really, really awesome product that we have. As you join in, I would love if you would introduce yourself in the chat. Maybe let me know what your name is, what your location is, and what your role is, the classic three. I'll go ahead and start off for myself. My name is Christian. I'm a customer trainer here. I'm based out of our DC, or well, remote out of DC at Lucid Software. So I spend all day, every day in these kinds of webinars, training folks on how to use our product. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the Zoom webinar chat. Would love to hear from you. And in the meantime, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by my Lucid colleagues. Torgi, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. David Torgerson. I've been with Lucid for a little over 11 and a half years. If you notice, Christian called me Torgy when I joined or when he introduced me. That's because when I joined, there was 23 people in the office. There was already two Davids, and three is just too many. I lead security here at Lucid, and I've had a long career in developing and leading security across various organizations. Nathan.
Thank you. And good morning. So I'm Nathan Cooper. I'm a director here of security at Lucid Software, and I've been at the company for just about 10 years. Today's topic is actually a lot of fun for me, and so I'm really excited to be here. Let's see.
Awesome.
We've got Tim as well.
All right. Zoom, I'll get this down. Yeah. Senior Director of Product here at Lucid. My teams work on Enterprise Shield. So I get to work with our security teams to get customer feedback internally, as well as many of you, I hope. Really excited to be able to be here with you today and talk about our product.
Thanks so much, Tim, and welcome to everyone here. Thank you so much for also posting in chat. Hannah, I love the energy. Jeff, welcome. I was born in California, so good to see you. Voice, Lily, Trina, thank you so much for joining. Super, super excited. Karthik, I love just dropping the LinkedIn. You're like, here's everything you need to know. And then speaking of kind of everything you need to know, let's go ahead and talk about a couple things before we get started with our webinar today. Just a couple of housekeeping items on how to best interact with our session. So first things first, this webinar is being recorded. You can go ahead and after about a couple days, so end of week or so, you can expect an email sent to you with the email that you used to register for this session. That email is going to contain the recording, captioned version of the recording, along with some really awesome resources. Things like blog posts, security information, and overall product info. I'm going to talk about all of those different resources towards the end of our session today as well. But keep in mind that email is going to be sent to the one that you used to register for this event. Another thing too, really love all your participation in chat. We don't want this webinar to be just us talking at you. Lucid is a very collaborative platform, and we also want this webinar to be highly collaborative also. So my only ask here is for any questions that you have, please go ahead and use the Q&A section. Thank you so much, Audrey, for posting that as well. The Q&A section in your Zoom webinar. That's going to be in your Zoom toolbar, either at the bottom or the top, depending on where it's at for you. And it looks like a little chat box with a question mark inside. Asking your questions there will ensure that they get answered. Most of them should be answered during the session, and any ones that are not will be sent to you after the session as well. And finally, live captions are enabled for this webinar, so you can go ahead and turn those on if you like. And with that, I would love to go ahead and get us kicked off, and I'd like to turn it over to Nathan and Torgi to share what new advancements we have in cyber threats and what we're seeing today.
Absolutely. So, like Nathan mentioned, we are actually really excited for this topic. Selfishly, this is something that Nathan and I have been talking about just amongst ourselves over our careers and just what we have noticed throughout the recent decades in terms of advancements, and really how that explosion of all of those things coming together and just some of the really scary things that we're seeing in the industry has really started happening in the past year and a half with the advancements of AI. So we're going to bear with us for a few minutes. We're going to start walking through a few decades of attacks and just some of those trends, starting with the decade that I was born. Nathan.
Thank you. So that would be the 1980s. And this decade has the distinction of many, many glorious firsts for the cybersecurity community. This is, for example, really the birth decade of the internet. And we also have Kevin Mitnick's first conviction for hacking digital equipment corporate systems. And just like in the movie War Games, the major vector for attacks or at least digital attacks, are on modems that work over phone lines. Social engineering also existed, of course, via phone lines, but generally required that you sounded like, the person that you were trying to impersonate. Strolling forward towards the 1990s, this decade brings it with it the first official phishing emails, which we're going to talk more about later. These include the classic Nigerian Prince email scam, which is a form of advanced fee fraud attack. Now, these malicious emails were generally rife with like grammatical errors, red flags, misspellings, and other things that would indicate that, perhaps somebody behind it was not who they indicated they were. Um, Other popular attacks were focusing also on AOL's instant messaging platform, where users were basically trying to con each other into downloading malware or giving away sensitive information or something like that. Now, into the 2000s, the Nigerian Prince scam still has a lot of steam behind it, but they generally have dropped the royalty part of it, and now it's different entities, like literally the Bank of Nigeria or other entities that you're unlikely to be able to contact to get additional information. So you'd only have recourse to talk to the person who initially reached out to you. This also is the birth of organized digital crime during this particular decade. We have a man named, or in 2002, we have a man named Brett Johnson, who started an organization called Shadow Crew. Now, the Shadow Crew members, they started meeting together mostly digitally, and they would share malicious code, attack ideas, and even, compromised information and other nefarious ideas. The Secret Service actually dubbed Brett Johnson as the original internet godfather making reference to the movie. This also landed Brett Johnson on a spot on the FBI's most wanted list. Now, the ill-gotten gains from the Shadow Crew completely reshaped the future of organized digital crime, which we'll see in a minute. Q 2011, and we have Ross Ulbricht, aka the Dread Pirate Roberts. He establishes the first modern underground or black market or dark web, whatever you want to call it, marketplace titled the Silk Road. And you had credentials, you had credit card information, you had drugs, and you also had pizzas and other things that you could buy that were actually legitimate. But generally, it was an interesting and fairly shady place a lot of the time. Now, in this decade, organized crime is flourishing. From credit card mules to DDoS booters, an entire economy of cyber crime is in full swing. However, looking back at the actual attacks, you'll see that things are fairly familiar. Primarily, they're text-based attacks using publicly accessible personal information, ugly grammar, generally unconvincing pretexts, and the like. They still have success, though, because of, the law of large numbers.
And when Nathan and I were going through this, he used that phrase, and I just wanted to call out, like, the law of large numbers is if I send out a garbage message to 2 million people, odds are at least 2 of them are going to open it. And that's what a lot of these attacks were focused on, is just, I don't care about a massive amount of success. If I can get a couple of successes, that's going to equal a win for me.
Yeah. And an interesting side note on that as well is in some cases that was actually an efficiency gain for the attackers, because if they had people who were relatively easily duped and they fell for the emails regardless of all the red flags, that meant that, the attackers, the adversaries, had to spend less time on more tech savvy people who would get partway through the con and realize, oh, I've just wasted this attacker's time. So it's kind of a win-win for them, but we see something changing on the horizon. The images, by the way, on this page are all real attacks against Lucid employees. My favorite on this list is where the attacker is impersonating someone named Peter Rawlinson. That's actually Lucid Motors CEO and not Lucid Software. So I thought that was pretty funny.
And my favorite on this list is actually the one in the dead center where it says, "Hi, Dave. I am in a webinar session at the moment. Can't talk on the phone." This was to our CEO, Dave Groh. My favorite is that follow-up message, "I am your boss. Are you available to talk now?" This is something that our CEO shared with me recently when I was talking about phishing, etc. And this is something that he saved on his phone for a long time. And anytime he wants to chuckle, he opens it up.
It's Dave, I am your boss. That's impossible. Okay, so if we move over into the 2020s, so we're going to talk about 3 years or so here. We see an explosion of context-aware attacks. They're fueled by the world's focus on COVID-19 pandemic. The content is certainly engaging. It's engaging to the worldwide audience, but the tactics, again, are roughly the same. We have adversaries impersonating government email domains. Attackers are preying on fear and greed, and generally bad grammar is used throughout. And I don't know, maybe like secret offers are there for unmarked toilet paper rolls or something, when people were particularly desperate. The content, again, is appropriate, but the tactics are essentially the exact same. All of that changes, however, in 2023. In 2023, video and audio generative AI finally hits the big screen. And here on the video is an example of an actor who, instead of being cast as super spy Ethan Hunt, has Tom Cruise's face digitally cast over his own in a quite believable way. Now, on the right of that is my favorite thus far that I've seen, where a digital artist has managed to replace, oh, and actually this will be on the next slide. A digital artist has replaced Uncle Rico from the movie Napoleon Dynamite with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So hopefully we can get that to work and you can taste a little bit of that magic.
Yeah. Coach would have put me in fourth quarter. We would have been state champions, no doubt.
Are you serious?
But there's no doubt in my mind. You better believe things have been different. I'd have gone pro. Heartbeat, I'd be making millions of dollars and living in a big old mansion somewhere. Soaking it up in a hot tub with my soulmate.
Well, that's amazing. I hope you guys enjoy that. Like I said, that's one of my favorites. And I love that it combines the audio and video, including micro expressions. And it's not only entertaining, but also informative.
Well, when the security industry saw that and saw the advancements of AI, one of the predictions last year, if you go and read a lot of the security leaders' predictions, it was that we were going to start seeing those deepfake attacks be used as part of the phishing attacks that were just common across the industries. And earlier this year, there was an employee in a Chinese organization that received a phishing message. And I'm not sure if it was over email or text, but it was one of those two. And the message came from the CEO. And what it said was, "I need you to help me wire a secret transaction to several different bank accounts. Nobody can know." So this employee getting that, thinking, "Oh, this is a phishing attack. I know what to do. I'm just going to say, no, etc." Well, the attackers had prepped for that. And what they did is they had generated a Zoom call where not only was the CEO being deepfaked, but there were several other leaders from this organization also being deepfaked. And the employee joined the call, and after a little bit of conversation with this deepfake live person that looked and sounded like the CEO, they agreed to transmit 5 different amounts to 5 different banks that totaled, I think it was 200 million in Chinese dollars or 25 million in US dollars. And it wasn't until after that call that this employee was talking with their manager about the secret transaction that they had just taken place that they realized what had happened. And at that point, it was too late. So what we're seeing, if we fast forward to today, is not necessarily anything new in terms of the types of attacks. It's still being fed off of fear. It's still being fed off of we have to do something quickly, like there's urgency associated with it. And we have employees that are trying to do the right thing and keep their bosses, etc., happy. But what we're seeing with the advancements of AI is a couple of things. One, now voices can be impersonated. Two, now faces and interactions and micro expressions can be impersonated. So, where we used to be able to rely on phone or a Zoom call, those aren't necessarily strong verifications anymore. The other thing that we're seeing with AI is AI doesn't get tired. Like, yes, maybe the computers running it can power off, but at least with a human attacker, they have mental fatigue. And at some point, it's not worth it for them to continue to try to con somebody. But with AI, it can just go on forever. It can continue to make these relationships and these establish more of a pattern, so that sense of urgency isn't as critical. And then the other part of that is not only can they do that on an individual, they can now do that wide scale across millions of people at the same time. And that's really where we've seen these advancements of phishing come from.
Yeah. Can you imagine like romance scams were a big thing, and catfish scams. Again, it used to be that was a very, very manual and expensive interaction on the attacker's part. Not so much anymore. Now you can have a very human sounding robot on the other end of that doesn't eat or sleep or need a lot of amenities. The next two slides that we're seeing, and by the way, I hope that nobody on this call ever has the necessity to go through the same kind of pain point of losing $25 million because of one of these. But I imagine it's probably going to be a little bit more common, especially over the next little while. So these next two slides, they show a very interesting story. These come courtesy of Abnormal Email. That's a security filtering or a security email filtering company that specializes in machine learning and natural language processing of the emails that come in. So we have, from the very same attacker, same IP address, different domains, but generally the same name and the same gist, we have two emails. The first one, it looks very, very similar to the human-generated phishing emails that we've already seen before. Again, you've got bad grammar, a very, very flat intent, and it's not very engaging. If we move over to the next slide, contrast that with this email that's a little bit more verbose and it's wordy, and it has a little bit of awkward phrasing in a couple of places, but it has much higher empathy, it looks much more human, and drives significantly greater engagement. These emails came a few minutes, one right after the other, likely so that the attacker can gauge the efficacy difference between the two of them. Again, it's basically an A/B test for humans to see which one of these is going to con more people, and is it worth adding in this Gen AI? Like if I was to give my unofficial, armchair commentary, one of those is a lot more engaging to me and a lot more likely to con people. So again, this really is a brave new world that we're kind of stepping into, but we have really fun information about how you can kind of address some of that as well.
Yeah, Nathan, this is all, and Torgi, this is all fascinating to me. My sphere is not as much the security sphere, but one thing that we always learn with any level of job is everyone works in security and everyone is absolutely critical in kind of driving forward these secure practices. And one of the biggest takeaways for me, and I'd be curious to hear from everyone in the webinar, drop in the chat, what was your biggest takeaway from everything Torgi and Nathan talked about? One of the biggest takeaways for me was just a lot of the things that we've been trained to look out for, the bad grammar, the phishing, the smishing. At this point, I'm like, okay, do my checks and balances. But now we have to come up with new checks. We have to come up with new processes and new ways of really dealing with this evolving threat landscape. So for everyone in the webinar, let me know in the chat, what was your biggest takeaway from everything we just covered? And in the meantime, Nathan, I would love to hear, what do all of these sort of threats mean for us today? What does this mean for organizations today as we adapt to this?
Good
And
question.
Christian, Nathan, sorry, do you mind if I jump in really quick? Because Christian, you said something that I am sure my security team internally is getting tired of hearing. But over the past decades, the approach to addressing security is to teach our employees what bad looks like. Look for bad grammar. Look for an email that doesn't match up. Look for something that's suspicious. Look for something that has urgency. We've been teaching what does bad look like. But with the advancements in AI, it is impossible to teach all of the ways of what bad could look like. So the focus that we've been making internally at Lucid is, what does good look like? We acknowledge that there might be hundreds of thousands of ways that something could go wrong, but if we can teach a single good path that we know and we trust, that is far easier for employees to understand. It's far easier to audit. It's far easier to implement. So I love that you use that phrase. It's so hard to detect, because it is, and it's getting even more scary, but that doesn't mean it has to be impossible. We just need to shift that paradigm to focus on what good looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. And this, again, this is not new to the security community at large. For example, when you go to log into your corporate accounts, wherever they may be, usually you're not walking into a receptionist where you need to like sweet talk them or convince them that you are who you are. You're going to a web portal and you have a username and a password. And if either of those things are incorrect, you just don't get in. That is an example of what good looks like. You go to the right portal, you put in the username and the password, and then you get in. Now, obviously, I'm going to hope that you guys have MFA and stuff in place, but the idea is nobody is looking for what is the, like, is this a bad thing right there? Because there's only one good there. Now, if we look at some other examples, we've got a couple of diagrams and things that we've put together. These were inspired by a lot of our employees talking about how they can verify things within their own departments. And these are not the full process diagrams by any means, but they're helpful for us to talk about MFA and what that means in this kind of a world where biometrics is a lot less trustworthy. So this is the case of a stolen laptop. Let's say that, you know, our laptop is stolen. Part of our process in reporting the process is reporting the theft so that we can get that laptop shut down, locked, you know, wiped, whatever needs to happen. It's generally very low risk to lock down those laptops, which means that the verification steps that you have to put for it do not need to be as robust as other workflows. Again, we don't want to completely clog up all of our business systems with just egregious or over-the-top verification steps. It needs to be commensurate with the risk of the flow. So in this case, somebody's lost their laptop, but if they've got their phone and their phone is tied into a corporate communications method, they can just, you know, send a message over that, or they can call and then we can call them back and make sure that at least their phone is there. Yes, there's like SIM swapping and other potential that someone could do, but the chances of that happening for only the benefit of locking the device are generally worth the speed. So let's move on to the next example. This is resetting MFA. Now, this is a slightly more important verification required because it's a more sensitive flow. In this case, we're going to require that, hey, you need to be able to authenticate using an existing factor or something. So log in with your existing laptop. You've got Slack or you've got email or something. Send us a request over those kind of things where you're already obviously authorized, and we can work with you. We can verify that the support ticket came in through a company internal only system. Again, you've already shown some factors, verification of who you are. And we don't need, again, to go over the mountain for this and throw that pigskin over the mountain. Move on. Let's move on to the next one. This is resetting passwords. Now, resetting passwords is a fairly sensitive thing. It's highly sensitive, really. So therefore, we require more stringent, more robust verification for this case. In this case, you're going to need to be coming in from an authorized app or something, and then we're going to verify your identity over a video call with an HRIS system. Now, in this case, we've got something you have, which is that laptop with authentication. Ostensibly, you've also logged into that laptop with something you know. And then we're doing a biometrics check on your face using our HRIS system.
And
So
Nathan, as
Yeah.
part of that, because like with the deepfake, it's entirely possible that our verification could be contacting somebody that is using deepfake, right?
Mhm.
So how do we verify their identity on that Zoom call over HRIS beyond just the biometric that we're looking at their face and it looks like the picture?
So that's a good question. In this case, we've already verified them from the fact that they're coming in from a device. Now, is it possible that someone could have stolen a company device, figured out a password or ability to log onto that device, then get into the user's profile so that they could access the applications and the security tokens that are in there, and then, you know, contacted us or reached out, made that phone call through Zoom or something, right? Which would be our authorized video call, and then also faked their biometrics, all in this period of time before the employee could notify us that their laptop's been stolen. The chances of that are really, really small.
Gotcha. So when we say initiate video call, we're not just saying like send a Zoom link over text. We're saying send a Zoom link over the internal authorized communication platform that only an
Yep.
employee would have access to, and
Exactly.
therefore having the validation of the biometric and that communication platform.
That's right.
Got it.
And now, is it perfect? It's not. Like, just to answer the question, it's not perfect. Security is not a perfect occupation. If you want perfect security, I think Bruce Schneier had a comment about taking your data, burying it 20 feet and putting armed guards over it and making sure it's never turned on or connected to the internet, right? But what we are trying to do is reduce risk to an acceptable level. So let's talk, however, about, let's say that you have to establish your entire identity, meaning you don't have a laptop, you don't have a phone, you don't have anything that's connected. How can we do that reasonably? And this kind of answers your question a little bit in terms of deepfake, right? What if they are deep faking it and we're not able to connect them through a established corporate connection? Well, let's get their biometrics. That's where we establish the video call, right? And could that be defaked? Yes, absolutely. Let's pull on that person's manager or a peer who's working with them closely. And they can talk about the things that they had for lunch yesterday together. They can talk about, hey, how's your family doing when they're sick or whatever? Like, hey, what is the code that you're working on right now? Something ideally that you're not posting publicly, something that would not be ascertainable through OSINT, but some way that we can get something that that's verifiable, and we can get some kind of second form of verification. Now, is it better if somebody comes into the office? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Like, that would be way better because it's really hard to digitally pin somebody else's face on your face. Again, unless you're Ethan Hunt, I guess, in the Mission Impossible series. But generally, you're not going to have a lot of success if an attacker is coming in with that, or they're not going to have a lot of success in person. But we are in a hybrid world. A lot of us are, that's a fact of life. And so we need to come up with other factors of authentication that don't just rely on somebody's face looking similar. Let's hop over to the next slide. And this kind of explains it in general. So again, this is by no means comprehensive, and you may disagree in terms of the strength of a particular factor. But the idea is we need to go back to MFA and not have biometrics be a single factor of authentication. We've got lots of things. You've got something that you know, something that you possess, or something that you are. And even inside of each of those, they're not all created equally. There's some that are really, really weak. Like a phone call, it's a lot easier to fake. You can fake that with little preparation in real time. Maybe you're even just really good at accents. That can be faked. But, if somebody comes in and they put their finger down on a fingerprint reader that is active, and able to detect common falsification, and you're seeing somebody's face, like, that's a really, really strong method of biometric verification. But again, try not to rely on single factors of authentication, right?
And if we could stay on this slide just for a second. So the $25 million example that I shared previously, That attack revolved on a phishing message that the attacker knew would be identified as a phishing mechanism, and was relying on the fact that that employee would want to have a Zoom call for that verification. Where it fell apart is that Zoom call was sent through an untrusted mechanism. It wasn't sent through the corporate environment. And the employee that was capturing or responding to that, acknowledging that they were connecting to an untrusted environment, and it just so happened to have all these other trusted people on it. So if we take a look at these MFA examples, one, we had an untrusted mechanism that came in, and then we validated it, or the employee validated it with a second untrusted. So while there was multiple factors, they were two untrusted factors. All right, let's go to the next slide. So how can we help our employees and help ourselves to protect against these types of things? And go back just one slide. As part of that, we need to make sure that our employees know what good looks like. And we need to make sure that they know that it is okay to say, we need to pause and validate, especially when we're talking about something that is business critical, like transferring money or sharing something that is confidential information or exposing data that we wouldn't typically expose to a third party or another internal individual. So in this example, fake attacker initiates a message. The first question is not, was it a name of a person that I knew, but did it come in through a trusted platform? If it's no, can we switch this to a trusted platform to continue the conversation? That alone provides one of those levels of verification. And then once you can validate that, you can use that second form of identification of the biometric or the face or asking some more sensitive questions between the parties to validate that. If it is in a corporate communication platform, great, move on to that second form of validation. But at least one of your MFA tokens needs to be from a high trusted list, such as using internal communication standards. So one of the things that is really important, and as Nathan and I have prepped about this and talked about this, a large part of what we do is we look at our data that we're protecting in the organization, and we look at how are we going to protect our data across all of our platforms, including protecting against and detecting data exfiltration. Now, we have an internal product that Tim is going to walk us through in a minute. This is not intended to solve all of your problems, but just like Nathan and myself look at solutions to protect our email provider and our other collaborative suites, Lucid also has tools to protect your data while it's in Lucid. So Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you to take it away.
Thank you, Tori. Sorry, I had to find that unmute button. It seems to be eluding me today a bit, but thank you. And yeah, I appreciate that lead in because Lucid can solve a lot of problems, but as you heard from Torgi and Nathan, there's real strategies across how you manage your entire enterprise. But when you get down to individual apps, how do they play in that space and that sphere? And if I think of how Lucid uses Lucid, and we're seeing this more and more as our customers continue to expand with the Lucid Suite, it gets broader and deeper the kind of information that you put in to that environment. So there's really three areas that we want to build out what we're calling Enterprise Shield, which is an add-on to be on top of our already highly secure platform to give you that extra piece of control that you really need as an admin. So the three areas we're going to talk about today as we go through this a bit are first, protecting sensitive data. Here, admins can automatically identify sensitive data in the system. They can watch for PII, GDPR, any other compliance regulatory pieces, and identify those, and then use granular controls to dictate how that should be managed in your enterprise. Again, the best way to manage exfiltration is to prevent it and get your users a framework and a method to have that. The next one is control content access. So how do we make sure only the right people are accessing my system? And so when we talk about that, we look exactly how you can go ahead and make sure that that data is secured and the layers of protection are there in place inside of Lucid for you as well. And finally, the last part is enhancing compliance. And this is when we talk about how data governance needs to be managed, content lifecycle management, Don't leave things laying around that could put you at risk. How do I control and manage that across my enterprise? So with that, I'm going to jump into some examples of how this can work for you. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Hold on. And the beauty of today's world is I have like 3 screens to choose from, but hey, hopefully I'm on the right one here. Okay, let's flip to the next slide, which is here. Okay, so when we talk about protecting sensitive data, there's really 4 areas that I'm going to touch on here. And I'm not going to walk through each of these, but I'll give you a demo here in a minute to let you see how these come together. First is content inspection. And this is really critical to identify that sensitive information in Lucid. And what we're finding is our customers are putting more and more information in here as they begin to think visually, use this to manage critical information in their enterprise. So you need to know what's going on in there to be able to manage it. In order to really make sure that you've got the right control, we've introduced what we call classification controls. And this is actually really a great way for you to be able to take those documents and make sure that they aren't part of an exfiltration, because you can say, you know what, if it's this type of document, let's lock it down and not allow it to be shared externally. I'll walk through that in a minute in our demo. Next, you can actually go and inspect the system and find out, has it been shared externally already? Are there documents that are already putting me at risk that somebody has already shared out? And this is a huge issue as we look at how companies are continually collaborating, whether it's consultants, whether it's other business partners. How do I make sure the right information stays in the right hands? This gives you the controls to do that. And finally, we've built extensions that you can go ahead and take advantage of our API. If there's things you want to leverage as far as how our documents are controlled and managed, you can do that as well inside of Lucid. So with that, let's flip over and we'll walk through a couple of these pieces and actually give you a hands-on. So I've gone into the Lucid administration panel, and I'm going to come down here and start in our compliance area. And here in compliance, this is really one of the key areas when we talk about what's going to happen inside of an Enterprise Shield. So let's start here by first talking about the policy for content inspection. What happens with content inspection? You as an administrator can turn it on. So the first thing we do is we would flip that on. And then I have a series of categories that we're actually looking for information. And I won't walk through each of these. You can scan them and see what they are as we go through this. But it gives you a great way to be able to see all the pieces of information we can have and show you in your documents. So it's very important as you're looking at compliance, depending on the type of organization you are, that you, again, are trying to prevent exfiltration of anything that may put you at risk as a business. So once this is turned on, we give you the ability to come in here and see the results. And this is dynamically scanning hourly to make sure anything that is modified is automatically scanned. I can see who the owner is. I can see which sensitivity labels it is. I can see how many matches there are. Today, I'm specifically concerned about USPII. That's something that's important to me in my demo environment here. So I come in and I can actually see this information very quickly. Now, I'm going to show you the document that I'm using on this. This is actually a great case study for what we're doing and about data exfiltration. Way back, Woolworth decided to go ahead and sell a wallet, and they put a sample Social Security card in there. This is the most used Social Security card in history and a great example of data exfiltration. They went and asked his assistant if they could see her card. They copied it and put it in thousands of wallets all around the country. So you can, if you want to read the article, it's there. But all in all, there's been about 40,000 people use this. So it's kind of a fun story, and it's safe for us to do in this demo. So as I come in here, I can see that we've got this Social Security number. I can see there's PII, USPII, and they found 11 things in this. So if I come in and click on this, I can see the document itself. Now, a couple of things that I'm going to show here in this inspection of what we've done is there's different levels. You can see I have a confidence level of possible, i.e. it's a person name, and we see that Hilda may be a person name. I can see likely, which means we kind of know this. Again, it's a person name. Woolworth, it's a more common name. And then down here, I see very likely for this Social Security number. It's a pattern, it's a match. It seems to make that so we can have that level of confidence. So you can very quickly get an idea of the kind of information that you need. And if you need to actually go in and inspect the document, you can actually come into the document at this point. It brings you in. We're actually in a special view here called Admin View. And what this does is this does not show up in the content history, but allows me as an admin to come in and make adjustments as I need to make sure the right things are going on in this document. Very powerful as we look at this and how a user as an admin could make sure, again, the data is being handled in the right way, that we're compliant against the various pieces as well. So now with that, let's flip down to the next part of this, which was I wanted to show the controls around this. So you'll notice here that her document in this piece is classified as private. And I haven't classified all the documents. That's a discussion we won't get into too far today. But as I go under here under attributes, you'll see that I have a set of classifications that I can put on a document. And I have this column here called controls. So if I come over here to edit the policy, I can come in here now and see that for each of these, I can decide what title I want to have. I can customize it. I could add classifications if I want. I could delete these if I didn't like the defaults. So if you want to call whatever yours are, that's great. But I can actually add controls on these. We offer 2 controls today, and we're going to continue to expand these. But today we have disable publishing and disable external sharing. So let's go look at this content. I'm going to go over here to this document as a user now. And as a user, I can see in the top of the header that it is flagged as private. And I'm going to come over here and try to share this document. So as I come in here, I'm going to go ahead and share it with tim@badguy.com. It's not my web pseudonym. This is just for a demo, people. Don't get too excited. And I'll go in here and you can see that it says immediately classification settings don't allow invitations to external collaborators. So we know that they will not be invited to the document. That's an important part of making sure that you're secure in this environment and you're doing the right things there. So very powerful when we talk about how classification controls can be applied. You can pick and choose which ones you want where, and you can also pick the settings. The last part I'm going to hit on here is, yes, I'm going to leave without saving, is document discovery. So now as we look at the scenario of having something that's already been out there, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go ahead and start and search for something that is in the last 30 days. I'm going to come under the advanced options and I want to just check, this is something you could do on a monthly basis, and check for anything that has external access. I'm going to come in here, I'll do a quick search. It'll come up with a list of results, and I'm just going to come over here to this blank board that I have, and I could go ahead and select it. And you can see here, I can, as the administrator, come in and immediately restrict external links, and actually pull this off. I can decide whether I want to notify the owner or not, but I, as an admin, can take action now and remediate if I feel an exfiltration situation has already happened. So lots of power when we talk about protecting sensitive data, that you as an admin can go in and really take control of your enterprise in the way that makes sense for you. Now, let's talk about controlling content access. Well, key to that is encryption. Let's make sure that when the data is at rest, it's secured and doing all those good things. That's a critical part of how you want to secure this. We support that with KMS and even allow you to do bring your own key if you would like. Very powerful. Sharing permission is great at the group level. We want to make that work. You can restrict login based on an IP range, and we even give you idle session timeout. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one, but I do want to call out the idea of sharing and how important that is. So if I come down here to sharing, by default, any enterprise customer can come in and have sharing settings. But what becomes very powerful, especially if you have multiple divisions, groups, or even a multinational company, you may want to go ahead and break this out based on groups. So in Enterprise Shield, we've introduced organizational groups, and we give the ability to provide granular controls of sharing settings. So I may say one group is a research group, very heavy. I want them to be restricted in how they share documents. I may even say, don't even allow them to share documents, but I can at least say be restricted, and that means they'll share them inside to internal people. And if I'm in sales, great, I can go to a sales group, and I may say in the sales group, I want them to be public. Very granular controls. Again, when we talk about exfiltrating data and making sure security bounds are set, it's critical that you give a system that users can use based on their roles and allow granularity. Enterprise Shield is all about providing that for you. All right, let's flip back and hit the last section, which is enhancing compliance. This is really an important part when we talk about making sure the right information is left in the system. Stuff that shouldn't be there needs to be removed. I've worked with research companies like pharmaceuticals, law firms, and so forth. It's a big deal to make sure that you're managing your information correctly. So we give you new retention controls to pull in and actually be able to manage when data should be deleted or not. an API to do legal holds. So when somebody needs to capture matters to be able to build up those cases, you can do that as well. We already talked about the admin view. And the last port is you can export document archives metadata. Again, these are a few of the key features, other things we can explore outside the seminar, but I wanted to at least give you some of these things to see. So what I'll show you here is I'm going to come down here to, oh boy, wrong button. Let's come down here to compliance again. And in compliance, you'll see retention. And here, by default, you kind of have this option to say, what do you want to do when stuff goes in the trash? Do you want to delete it or not? But with Enterprise Shield, we add this whole nother section where you can come down here and say, what is your retention period? How do you want it to be? Do you want it to be days, months, or years? What's your criteria? Do you want to delete just documents in the trash or all documents? Again, very granular control, very good options to make sure the right information exists in the systems for your users. Then other stuff is removed, permanently deleted and pulled off. So a critical factor in, again, how you want to manage these things. Anyhow, I hope this has given you a good idea of how Enterprise Shield can build on what should be hopefully a secure foundation for you as you go and implement Lucid. But with these features, we believe it can take it to the next level. Back to you, Christian.
Thank you so much, Tim. I'm going to go ahead and reshare. You wouldn't mind just doing the stop share there real quick.
It's as hard as the
No, I know, Zoom, right? All right. Well, I'll go ahead and reshare my screen here. And it was so cool to see Enterprise Shield in action, at least for me. I learned a lot today about how this product can really help you manage and make sure you're set on all these three pillars: protecting sensitive data, controlling content access, and enhancing compliance. And actually, someone posted something in chat that I really liked earlier. I think it was Lily that said people tend to not invest much into cybersecurity enhancement until very bad things happen. And I'm so glad that we've got to see this proactive approach that Shield really takes. Now, we've learned about these three things that Enterprise Shield can do. I would love to be able to wrap up our webinar today with a few resources and what you can expect in that email that I mentioned earlier. So I have these different QR codes here. You're more than welcome to scan each and every one of them. But let me start off with the first one here. So our Enterprise Shield product info page on the left-hand side here is going to be your go-to resource to be able to get more information and demos about the add-on, as well as get in contact with our sales teams. I saw a question about that as well, which we'll address live here in a second. The second resource is going to be a really cool blog post. It's going to talk about Lucid's long-standing proactive approach to data security. And it's going to include different information on not just Enterprise Shield, but our other security and compliance measures as well. And lastly, if you're someone that loves the details and getting into the nitty-gritty of it all, check out our security white paper. It's going to have a super in-depth and technical look into all of our advanced controls. Again, all of these resources, along with a captioned version of the recording, in just a couple days to the email that you use to register for this webinar. Now, I would like to transition the rest of our time into a dedicated Q&A session. So I've seen some questions in the chat. I've seen some in the Q&A. If you have more questions, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A so we can get those answered for you. One of the first questions I saw asked was, for Tim, can those remediation actions on documents be automated within Lucid, or does it have to be through APIs or something similar?
So we are actually going to be doing some more automation there. So one of the things we're working towards today, I can actually assign a classification as an end user or as an administrator. We showed you that. What we're working on is auto classification. And once a document is auto classified, it'll actually go ahead and apply those controls that you've applied to it. So today, if a user does it, yes, it'll apply immediately those controls and tell them that they'll need to pull off external users or something like that. But our goal is to automate this to help, again, I'll call it the airbags, help the user do the right thing, make sure we're auto-classifying documents that need to be auto-classified based on their content, and then remediate that accordingly. And we expect that to come over the next several months. So be watching for that. But today, a great solution that only gets better.
That is so awesome to hear. And another really good question, I believe by Lone here. Y'all are asking great ones so far. Keep it up. When you revoke external access, is it permanent, or can the doc owner reshare it with external people?
It takes people off at that time, but the key point there is if you apply the classification control, they would not be able to reshare it. There is a case that we're trying to close on this, that potentially the user could go ahead and reclassify it, but we're going to close that loop fairly quickly. Again, that's part of that work with auto classification that we're working on.
Awesome. So great to hear. What other questions do you all have? Tim and I could keep talking all day, but please let us know your questions here. I know you can't come off mute, but in the chat and the Q&A, that's what we're monitoring there, so we can get that addressed for you. Now, one key question I saw, which was so cool to see folks interested, what is the pricing for adding Enterprise Shield to an existing Enterprise account? Yeah, so you're going to want to scan that QR code there, this first one here, and if you're particularly interested, let us know here in this webinar as well, or send us an email. We can also have your dedicated Lucid account team member reach out to you. Pricing might look a little bit different for folks depending on what your needs are and how it's going to work for your specific instance. So super excited about your enthusiasm. Let us know if that's something you're interested in, and also scan this QR code here. I got another question coming at you live. Are we having any integrations with Copilot, and how are we making sure our data is staying secure?
I'll go ahead and take that one. We've announced an integration with Copilot that's available now, where we do actually populate the graph database with Lucid information. So you can actually ask Copilot, do I have a chart with this in there? And it can actually respond and say, yeah, it appears there's a Lucid chart document with that. Would you like to open it now? And we'll actually go ahead and open that document. So we do have an integration with Copilot that's available today. We partnered deeply with Microsoft to make sure it meets their standards. Super cool stuff. So I don't think there's concerns there.
Awesome.
And then
Thank
just
you.
from the security perspective, when it comes to LLMs, some of the big concerns are, do we ensure that data isn't being used to train various models where that data might be leaked to different accounts that aren't authorized to have it, etc. Also, is my data encrypted? Is my data encrypted at rest? Is it encrypted in transit? Do we offer KMS? Do we offer all of those things? The answer to all of those is we take a holistic look at security. We don't consider just any one point to be sufficient to protect every case, and instead we think of it more like an onion, where we add layers and layers of security to protect a lot of different facets. So if there's a more in-depth question, I would recommend reaching out and either pulling down our security white paper or reaching out to our sales team or to our CS team, and we are more than happy to go through a lot of those questions in much deeper depth. But the high level answer is, we take those things very seriously, and we look at protecting those by adding layers of protection, because no one single thing is good enough.
Definitely, Torgy. Yeah, to your point, it's a culmination of different things. We talked about all those really great processes earlier about how there's multiple checks. It's not just, the multi-factor authentication. There's also, sending resources and access of an internal system. And if we need to, being able to have even a verification identity check with your manager about your recent work. One thing that I particularly loved as I was taking a look at your demo, Tim, was how intuitive all this is for the user. So I have the cool opportunity of being on here with you all the security experts. I am not a security expert, but for me as a user, being able to say, oh, I labeled a document as internal. Now I'm not going to make the mistake of sharing it accidentally if it's a sensitive document. I'm curious from Tim, Torgy, and anyone else on the call, is there a favorite feature that you have about Enterprise Shield that you would love to be able to just let everyone know about?
I have one. So an interesting thing was the content inspection. Some of the different content components were particularly interesting for me, being in charge of protecting our own internal instance. So there's a classification in there. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's technical tokens or something like that. Going in and looking for those against our own instance would bring up things that the classification engine thought were passwords or those kinds of things that were being put inside of the documents. Generally, it's not something that we want to see. So being able to go in and find a bunch of documents where the classification engine saw, hey, there's a password in here, and being able to look at those documents and understand the why behind it. And in some cases, like change sharing, delete the document, get it purged. That was super interesting and helpful for my team. Now, in most cases, just like giving a little bit of clarity, they come up as things that are for demo accounts, right? We're going to be demoing for a customer or something, but I still like to understand that and maybe help the teams share credentials in a more secure way, right?
For me, my favorite feature is actually the audit logging capability. And the reason is we've talked about the importance of multi-factor authentication. We've talked about teaching employees and even ourselves the right way to do things. Inevitably, there's going to be a mistake. There's going to be a perfect storm where things just fall apart and there's going to be mistakes. And the reason that I like audit logs and Lucid's audit logging specifically is for two reasons. One, it lets me validate that things are working the way that I expect them to. That we have normal, boring days nearly every day. But in the event that something goes wrong, I can very easily identify, oh, this document was shared externally and it contained this type of information. That's probably something that we need to raise alarms on and either validate or remediate. So that audit logging piece gives me two things. One, it gives me comfort on the day-to-day basis because most of the time it is boring. But the times when it's not, I'm able to discover that quickly. And in a lot of these security incidents, time matters. Sometimes it's a one-time event, and once it happens, it's too late. But in most cases, time matters, and your ability to react quickly is important. So the audit log capability is my favorite component.
Kind of funny, actually. You mentioned that, Torgi. We've actually, so my team works with engineering, right? We've actually had cases where, despite all of our other logging that we had in place, it was actually easier for us to use, the customer-facing audit logs that are part of Enterprise Shield to debug things.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting to me to see it used in that way.
Well, I feel like a proud parent here as you guys talk about these features, and it's hard for me to choose which of my children I love the most. But I'll share one that I think is great, just as great as the others, which is the content controls, classification controls that we talked about. The ability for me to be able to put up these guardrails as users are using them to make sure that they do the right thing and they are guided to make sure the best thing happens. Don't share externally if the document's flagged as internal or classified or whatever you want to name it. It's that simple. And I think that's a huge add as we look to, again, where this whole webinar started from security. People honestly are trying to do the right thing, but if we don't put the right systems in place to help protect them from themselves, bad things can happen.
Wow, Tim, what a way, and Torgi, Nathan, and everyone else, what a way to close that out. And I love what you just said, Tim, about people are trying to do the right thing, and we just want to make sure that we have the system set up for them to be able to do that in an easy way that makes sense. So if you take something away from today, the security landscape is always evolving. Things are changing in new ways every single day. And if you're interested in different kinds of systems to be able to make these actions easier for your users, to be able to set up these processes for your team members in order to kind of evolve with these changing threats, let us know. Check out our product here, Enterprise Shield, and that is the end of our webinar. But thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. I really appreciate all your enthusiasm, engagement, excitement. If you have any questions, Lucid is here for you. Our account teams are here for you. Reach out in our community forums or partner with your account team members directly. But thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care.